up with the sun.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Shamanic Philosophy Podcast, a pseudoscientific, quasi-philosophical, non-expert discussion platform dedicated to a holistic exploration of the human experience. Shamanic Philosophy isn't just a podcast, but a community, a tribe of extended family from around the world who believe that together we have the power to make it a better place. We believe that change starts within each one of us and spirals out to our relationships and interactions. My name's Adam, and I feel so very blessed to be here with you today, sharing a mind-blowing discussion with one of the coolest and most interesting people I've ever met. His story is a crazy one, and I can't tell you how much I enjoy getting to hear it from the horse's mouth. So kick back, open your mind, and buckle up, because today we're exploring the cosmos with a guy who literally hangs out with aliens on a regular basis. His name is Dick Kahn, better known as the DMT researcher. Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and go live. How does that sound?
Why not? Let's do it.
All right, Dick Kahn on the hook right now, DMT researcher, guy that I have dubbed DMT Jesus.
That's a bit strong, but I don't know. I don't know. I'll take it. I don't know.
Well, you have no choice. I've already given it to you. You can trademark that later if you like. But, Dick, you've done DMT over 600 times over the course of about 3 years, yeah?
Yeah, that's exactly right, yes.
And then went and wrote a book about it. And by the way, just so everybody knows what a wonderful human being Dick is, Dick actually sent me a copy of this book from the UK out here to Texas, USA. Never arrived because of the mail system and a move that was happening at the time. But Dick, I did go pick up your book. I got it on Amazon. I recommend everybody go pick it up. This son of a bitch is huge. What a big book.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing...
I self-published through CreateSpace, and they sent me... It is huge. They sent me a proof copy, and I was like, oh, my God, it is huge.
Yeah, worth the read. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to get all the way through it yet, but you really, really did your work here. This wasn't just a matter of taking some DMT a few times and then writing a book about it. I mean, you really analyzed what you were doing, what the experiences were like, and this book it seems to be a great look into your mind, because DMT, like any other psychedelic experience, is different for everyone. And the title of this, which I absolutely love, is DMT and My Occult Mind: Investigation of Occult Realities Using the Spirit Molecule. That's by Dick Kahn. What a beautiful title. Tell me about where the title came from.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So I've had a long-standing interest in esoteric and occult philosophy. And by occult, in terms of the book, I really mean hidden. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think the thing with occult is, in the mainstream, it gets such a bad press.
People think you're talking about a cult.
Nefarious and taboo and connotations that come with it, but really at its heart there's some really profound, deep and insightful philosophies about, well, who we are, where we came from, cosmological considerations, anthropomorphic considerations. And I think it's such a shame that it gets such a bad press. So it was intentional to have occult in the title, because I think it's a word that really should be rehabilitated so that people can understand it better and access these deep and profound philosophies that are there, even themselves hidden away.
No, I agree. And what was your background? I've got kind of, and I've talked about this a little bit, I've got kind of an interesting background in esoteric studies. I stumbled upon a book series in my dad's bookcase when I was 5 years old, and it was an esoteric set of books about Atlantis and Egypt and ancient mysteries of all kinds, and that shaped the way that I saw everything in my life from that point forward, from 5 years old on. What the hell, man? Like, what? How did you get to a point? What was your story that got you into esotericism and all that? Because I think that's such a beautiful lens through which you can see or have the psychedelic experience. What got you into the esoteric side?
I think it's a number of things. I mean, from a very, very young age, I remember my dad sort of sitting me down and saying, son, if you could go up into the sky and go up into space and, go past the moon and past the planets and past the sun and go as fast as you like, you'd never get to the end of the universe. And that just set my mind on fire. It really did. I'd be in bed at night sort of trying to imagine the ends of the universe just to see what was there. And obviously you can never do that. So that was a big influence. But more than that, it's like when you smoke DMT, you get this ringing sound in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that ringing sound in my head since ever I can remember. I can hear it now. But when I was a child alone in bed at night, that noise was tremendous. And
it's deafening sometimes, isn't it?
It's what P.D. Newman, and I think that's such a good way of phrasing it, because, the room is quiet, but in the midst of your head, there's this roaring noise. And I used to sort of get up in the morning after a night's sleep, and this is me being a very young child, and I think, why am I talking about? I don't know, talk about it, but it's when I first smoked DMT and that sound amplified. I was like, oh my God, this is really interesting, because that noise in my head was such a significant part of my childhood. I mean, I just can't express enough how much of a big thing it was to me as a young child.
Yeah, it's something that even we were out on a hike here recently. I've got a couple of boys. My oldest is 12, my youngest is 7, and both of them very inquisitive, especially my 12-year-old. And he asked me, he said, "Dad, how come whenever it's really quiet, we have this loud ringing noise in our mind?" And now I know he just needs to go talk to his Uncle Dick, DMT Jesus, and maybe you have the answers, because I had no idea what to tell him. What is it?
That's awesome.
Have you figured
awesome.
anything out?
Well, in the West, it's medical, issues around that. I think some people genuinely do suffer tinnitus, whether it's age-related or work-related hearing disorders. But I think, in the East, there's another way of looking at it, and it's the sound of the spirit, it comes with all kinds of esoteric considerations rather than, that there's something wrong with my mind. I don't know, for me, I guess it's an interface between ourselves, whatever it is. It's something very profound, and, inhalation of even a small dose of DMT is going to amplify that sound. It's going to change the intensity and the frequency of that sound. And, you smoke more DMT, and, a lot of us know what happens.
I met you via Instagram before I had ever actually done DMT. And I've done it a handful of times since, and that ringing noise, you're exactly right. It's there, and just like any other time that you're laying there in the quiet, you become aware of that ringing noise, and the more quiet and the more focused you become, the louder it gets. And to the point where whenever you inhale the spirit molecule and you lay back, that noise, you become acutely aware of it, and then it becomes it's a roaring, overwhelming noise that takes over everything, and it's almost it becomes it's like a seismic wave that you end up riding off into the cosmos. Like I could understand why you say that it's almost like that sound is almost like an interface for the spirit in some way.
Yeah, indeed. And when you look at some of the esoteric and occult philosophies, they talk about the pineal gland. It can be set into vibration. It can oscillate. And, I suspect that, inhaling DMT, it does certainly seem to do something profound in the midst of one's head where that sound comes from. And I do suspect it's somehow making the pineal gland oscillate, vibrate, and that seems to unlock some latent energies within us, some, consciousness or spirit or mind energies, and they can very quickly fill a room, and that room can very quickly become turbulent with that mind energy. It really does unlock some. Doing that can equally attract something extremely powerful to within your setting, and then you're dealing with a DMT experience.
And for anyone who's never had a DMT experience, I can tell you that having worked with psilocybin extensively and with LSD to some extent, there's nothing for me quite like a DMT experience. I mean, it's shocking. You know, the first time I did it, it was I probably wasn't in the best mind state to do it, but I was excited and ready to do it, and I kind of dove straight from my normal alert problem solving state of consciousness and dove right into a DMT trip, and it was so disorienting that I almost didn't want to do it again. It was nothing I saw was terrifying or scary in any way, but it was almost, I've compared it to, it's almost like you go to a water park and it's almost like, my friends blindfolded me and took me to the biggest, tallest water slide they could find that was all enclosed, like one of those big tubular water slides with lights inside of it. And it's like they blindfolded me and just threw me down this water slide without me knowing what the hell I was getting into.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I've done it many times, and I think it's very, very few occasions where I thought I said, I really want to do this. I'm right in the mood for it. I mean, I have had that, but by far the majority of times it's like, oh my God,
what the hell am I doing here?
I'm gonna load a pipe and I'm gonna smoke that damn thing, and it's like you're walking to your own funeral.
That's exactly it.
And you know what the paradox is, Adam? It's like you smoke it. I mean, look, 98% of my trips have been, incredible, playful, imagine, and you would think if it you'd sort of race back to do it again. I'm coming back tomorrow. I'm going to do this, no problem. But it's like you're walking to your own funeral. And that paradox was hugely informative to me in sort of working out what was going on. That, it's not my mind alone. Something powerful is interacting with me. And somewhere in my mind, probably subconsciously, I there's a realization of that there's some other higher power powerfully interacting with you, and your mind or maybe your ego is saying, I don't want no more of that, I don't want no more of that. I've had to force myself forward. It's like smoke this.
That's exactly what happened. My first trip was I had heard so much about this idea of breaking through, and I was terrified. It's like I said, it was like going down a water slide, and I was fighting it, dragging my fingernails down the water slide, trying to stop the thing. And it was like I could feel the presence of a greater awakening at hand, and I just didn't have the balls to go through with it, man. I was too disoriented. It's not like any other experience I think that a human being can have, but it's one that you must have. I did it on video, and my girlfriend was with me, and I came out of it early, and I was disoriented, and I was trying to talk way too early because, I'm so fucking analytical and I'm trying to explain everything. I've got to explain things. And as I'm telling her how crazy and disorienting it is on the video, I'm just going, you know what? You've got to go. You've got to go. Like, forget it. Forget how scary it was. Forget how crazy and disorienting. It's something that everybody has to do. It's crazy to hear that's somewhat of a normal experience. I've only done it like 3 times, so I don't know.
Yeah, no shame in pulling out of an experience. I mean, look, I've pulled out of several experiences, midway through or at the beginning, because I thought, you know what, I just right now I just can't go through with this. And you know what, it's in pulling out of some experiences that I've really learned a lot about, about these experiences, what's actually at play. I mean, I smoked it once in the bedroom, and this being came, this energy came, and it, they can impose an energy that is just incredible. It feels solid. It just pervades you. You can feel your skeleton. It's such an incredible energy. And I don't know. I got the willies. I got scared, and
really,
this. Yeah, I was like, okay, let me out. And this being slowly, like, pull, like these long, thin, like tentacular sheaths throughout my body. I could feel it sliding, up my legs, down my legs, through my arms, through my torso. And it was like slowly releasing this strange grip it imposed upon me in that highly powerful state. But now it seemed it had to slowly, and it was very laborious. And I got to be honest, I felt so embarrassed and so abashed. And if I could have said, "Okay, let's go. I'm okay now," I would have done. But I was so embarrassed, I felt so abashed, because it's like, I don't know, at the time I felt I'd failed, but afterwards I thought, you know what? I learned so much from that, that being withdrawing from me, in that sort of lower energy state.
You were talking about this experience you had with this crazy entity, and I'm sitting here wondering, because I see all this DMT art and stuff, and like the DMT art, it's crazy, it's everywhere, and I've not had enough experiences, obviously, to encounter any other entities, and this is something I wanted to ask you about. Is you definitely talk about other entities. Tell me more about some of that. I mean, what the presence that you feel, and again, if you've never done DMT or any psychedelics, I mean, this is a very personal experience. I mean, it takes over all of your senses. Your whole sensory perception becomes wrapped up in this experience. So I can only imagine just how crazy it is to have an entity there, and how real and tangible that must be to you. Yeah,
it's incredible, and just to begin with my initial earlier DMT sort of scenery that's inspired all this tremendously good artwork. I mean, from that perspective of seeing those scenes, if you're an artist, I mean, DMT must be mana, because the things you see.
Well, and it creates an impression. Yeah, it impresses these images on your mind too. It's like I was never an artist. I'm a musician, right? But I played guitar for 20 years, and until I started working heavily with psilocybin, I never considered myself a musician or even a guitar player. I just told people would say, "Hey, I hear you're a guitar player," and I'd say, "No, I have a guitar and I played it for 20 years, but I don't like create music so much, as I play other people's music, and I enjoy strumming and goofing off. But working heavily with psilocybin, it unlocked parts of my mind, and what would happen is it would give me. Are you familiar with the term? Probably are, with synesthesia.
Yes, yeah, I'm familiar with that term, yes.
Yeah, so for the listeners, synesthesia is a condition in which different parts of the brain connect that don't typically connect. When you have the ability to hear smells or see sounds and things of that nature, or even a case that I talk about a lot, a guy named Daniel Tammet from the UK who can see numbers as almost like colorful shapes and patterns and things like that. And he can do very advanced, mathematical calculations by watching, different numbers combine with other numbers. But it's, the number 4 might look like a big blue ball with a red hat on top, or a red formation of some sort, like a geological formation almost. And psilocybin actually, and a lot of psychedelics, create a sort of temporary synesthesia in the brain. And working with psilocybin, I started to, even when I wasn't on it, I could hear songs in my mind playing over each other. Maybe it was a country and western song and a rock and roll song and a symphony, all playing over each other. And I started to be able to create that music and weave it together in a way on my guitar, and with lyrics that actually make good music. So psychedelics definitely inspire art in a huge way, and it's made me look at this DMT art. And like you said, it must be manna for an artist to take DMT, because ever since I started taking, or ever since I took DMT, the few times that I did, I dream so much more vividly now. Even after the first time, my girlfriend and I both, we dream so much more vividly and so much more clearly. And I even started drawing and things like that from DMT. Did you develop any artistic inclination through your DMT experiences, or do you draw or anything like that?
No, I think for me the writing was really helpful to integrate and reflect on my experiences.
Gotcha.
And because DMT is so fast acting. I could, sort of write my reports contemporaneously, and that was hugely helpful. And I would encourage anybody really, if they're so inclined, to keep a journal or write down, because, if you don't, you're likely to sort of forget some. I mean, I remember, I don't know, maybe a 10 or a dozen that really stick out in my mind. But then when I started to look through my reports, I think, oh my God, yeah, I remember. Oh my God, how can I forget that one? And I think that's been really helpful. Yeah, so with the initial experiences, yeah, they're very sort of highly defined environment scenes, and for sure it made it look like I was in a world, another dimension, an alien dimension, a parallel dimension, and that totally fascinated me. But my intention with DMT was to try and understand the causal nature of the experience after inhaling the potent vapor. So I started to think, well, how do I get halfway to hyperspace? And, I start messing about with the doses and stuff like. Well, it seemed a valid point because they say it's 3 tokes to get to hyperspace, and I think that's valid because while you're taking those 3 tokes, that's sufficient time for your consciousness to very rapidly amplify. It's sufficient time for an otherworldly being to manifest, and it's sufficient time for that to then, I don't know, it seems to like weigh you up and then decide what's going to happen. And those 3 tokes, those few seconds, just seems to be enough time for all that to, most of the time, to actually occur. But yeah, I said, how do I get halfway to hyperspace? So I'd do silly things like, I'd say, okay, I'm going to mess about with the doses, and I'd prepare 3 pipes. And I don't know, I'd be like, 3, 4, 5 grams, 6, 7 or 8, milligrams, 6, 7 or 8 milligrams, and then 12 milligrams. And, I'd smoke it in the room, and, the mind energy manifests, and I'd wait 10 minutes. I think, okay, well, that was interesting. And then I'd smoke the next pipe, and more mind energy would manifest, but, no interaction, no beings. Think, okay, right, okay, that's interesting. And then I'd smoke the third, and I had occasions where all of a sudden it felt like I'd pissed my pants. I mean, honest to God, I was laid there and I'm like, what? I was like, man, have I, it's like, am I bleeding? Have I pissed my pants? And honestly, like down in my groin area, it's just like, felt like, I genuinely felt like I'd pissed my pants. And I'm like, putting my hand down there, I was like, no, it's dry. And I think, it just starts to indicate that something's messing about with me. Something is able to create this perception that I've pissed my pants, not by modifying my mind, but somehow with its body of mind, it's able to sort of make that region feel like I have pissed my pants. And yeah, I mean, it's like silly things like that. Or
well, I've heard of a particular female saying that she felt like there was, as soon as she blasted off, she felt like there was a rod of glowing warm light that was inserted into her vagina, went through her chakra system and out the top of her head like a unicorn. And she said it was the most profound feeling, and not necessarily in a sexual way at all, but just in a being completely filled with light. And she went on to describe the experience as feeling like she went to be with God and was God, and that the entire universe was her. And so I understand what you mean, but she described it as a very physical feeling.
Yeah, these spiritual entities, they seem able to form this, I call it a quasi-physical sort of material, and they seem to be able to do all sorts with that. So, I've smoked DMT. This is after, so with in the artwork, I find that changed after a while. That changed, and I wasn't seeing those sort of highly defined environments. I was just sort of, it was mostly transparent, and these beings were just doing different sort of tricks. So I would smoke DMT, I'd lay back, my mind would manifest, fill the room turbulently, something else would arrive, impose a tremendous amount of power, and then it felt like I got this large, heavy, square block on my chest, and I just dared dare not move. I mean, it's a DMT experience. You're mesmerized, you're transfixed. And I'm laying there, my chest is rising. I feel this heavy block on my chest, but there's nothing there.
I've felt that before. And it freaked me out when I did DMT. In fact, it happened the first 2 times. And it was part of the uncomfortable or even disorienting, terrifying part of the experience was I almost felt like I couldn't breathe, and I think that's what scared me initially. Was I thought, this is my first time doing it, and I've got this massive weight on my chest, but it was very physical. It was like a 40-pound block laying on my chest for sure. And you've addressed the question that I've had, and this is just in my ignorance maybe of DMT, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it, obviously, through our community on Instagram and on YouTube and things like that. But I've always wondered, like, could you do it once and then do it again shortly after, and then do it again shortly after? And well, I guess I have my answer.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, with that, with sort of continuing to smoke it. I mean, look, I've played around with DMT pipes outside, and I've experienced levels of drama that just off the scale. So you see your mind manifest up into the sky. It's an incredible sight, and then you smoke some more, and something, not enough to have something impose upon you, but certainly enough to attract a being into your setting, your presence, and you smoke some more, and it's there, and you can feel its power, and you can see it. And then, you wait a few minutes and you sit up and you smoke some more, and then this being is going to be there, and it's more or less telling you, it's like, you carry on like that, son, and I'm going to come down there and I will show you what's what, and that drama is just, oh my God, it's like you put your fist in your mouth and you just want to bite down hard on your fist.
Okay, so this brings up, this is totally a question I had, because with my experience with mushrooms being my most extensive experience, you can't do that back to back to back, right? You do a mushroom trip, and then you kind of need to take a break, especially if it's a substantial one. Can you? It sounds like you can pick up where you left off if you smoke some DMT and then you do it shortly after. Do you go back into that same mind space or that same place in hyperspace where you're with the same entities, you're surrounded with the same environment? Once you've attracted these things and you sort of called in these entities, are they? It sounds like you're saying that they're still there, and that the deeper you go, the closer they get. And is that the case?
So I think what probably I have to say is that my experience has changed. As I say, to begin with, it looked like I was going into this other world, and I had that many times, and then I started to play around. I strictly thought I've gone as far as I can with these experiences, and that was a really stupid thing to think. And there were 2 or 3 experiences that, I know, there were 2 or 3 experiences that were like, they were repeat experiences. So I'd come home from work, I'd smoke DMT in the landing area.
You're like, oh, I've already been there, done that. I've seen it all.
Exactly. I think I've gone and I was stupid to think I've gone as far as I can. And then it was like the next time after that, the experience was so different. It was invasive. So it was far more power, and this being invested a portion of its body of mind, shall we say, within my throat, within my oral environment, and it was just manipulating my psyche. Manipulating my oral physiology. I was like crying out, not in pain, but just sort of wail out or cry out. And upon doing so, my voice was modulated so bizarrely. And upon hearing that, I felt obliged to speak again and again. And the things they were doing, and it was incredible, but it was unsettling. So at the conclusion of experience, I burst into tears. It was like, I don't know, it's like a violation almost.
Right.
What they can do to you, and I burst into tears. I was beside myself, and I came down, and my wife had heard me, and she's like, "You okay?" Yeah, and I was just inconsolable, and I went to lay on the sofa, and then it all sort of came washing over me again. I just burst out crying. And that marked a change in my experiences. It was like after that, I didn't so much see those highly defined environments, but it was more transparent and started to see these this crazy stuff, this crazy invasive stuff. So, there was one occasion where I smoked it and, my mind fills the room. Within seconds, something else arrives, imposes tremendous power. And, and I'm in the room and I know I'm in a DMT experience, but it's like, okay, well, what's happening now? Nothing's happening. And then it's in my trachea, with that quasi-physical substance, and it's slowly, very slowly, effectively reducing the internal diameter of my trachea. So my breathing is becoming more and more labored and difficult. And well, to begin with, it was fine. I thought I'm okay. But honestly, it went on and on. And yeah, then you start to think, oh my God, I think this is a misadventure. I'm going to die here, and there's going to be no evidence of how I've tried not to panic, but it's starting to build up. And then, I was on the verge of outright panic, and that might sound funny, but it's a horrible emotion. And just on the verge of outright panic, when I was going to scream out for my wife, it just went. It all just went and vanished, and I could breathe normally.
Man, this is the type of situation that freaks me out because, I came into this with maybe I knew just enough to be dangerous, and I particularly had read and studied a lot about ayahuasca experiences and how, in some ways, I don't want to say traumatic, but in some ways, they can be frightening. And I'm sure you're familiar with the work of like Graham Hancock.
Yes.
So I'm a big Graham Hancock fan, and he's gone into a lot of detail about his experiences, particularly with ayahuasca and also with DMT. And of course, if anyone hasn't read Rick Strassman's DMT, the Spirit Molecule book, or seen the film, the documentary film they made about that, you really should. But these, some of the experiences that people describe are, like you say, they're very invasive. And I think Graham's last, and I couldn't remember, and I want to go back and find out now, but his last, I think it was his last DMT experience, or it might have been his last ayahuasca experience. He said it'll be his last one for a while, because when he got to that place, he felt all these hands grab him, and they said, "We've got him." And they started pulling him apart and putting him back together. And man, fuck that. Well, I've never had that happen on mushrooms.
Well, I think it's how you choose to look at it. I mean, experiences like that, they can so easily be your last ever psychedelic experience. But I was, for 3-4 minutes, I was like beside myself after that experience. But then you start to think, you know what? I think I've just been played. And I think this is the sort of trick to being able to progress further. You think, okay, you got me real good. But I recognize that, it's like they've taken my emotions right up to the threshold of fear. And just as I was about to step over, then they leave it. It's like a psychic trick. That's my interpretation.
So I wonder if it's like with mushrooms. I've had this discussion with a lot of people, whether it's been having a gathering at my house and hosting this sort of tribal group setting where we do this together and discuss our experiences as we're coming down afterward or whatever. But on psilocybin trips, you can have these encounters often with entities that don't seem to be positive entities. But it's like you're saying, it's almost like they pull these psychic tricks on you to see how you respond. And by overcoming the fear that you experience in that moment, and by pressing through, I feel like, and a lot of others feel like, this is you observing the experience of truly conquering your own demons. Is it anything like that?
I think,
is it totally different?
I don't know about conquering demons. It certainly tests your resolve, your character, your spirit. I mean, I've had experiences where, and I've been in the DMT experience, and I have I have said to that entity, okay, I will never do it again. I promise I'll never do it again because I've been. Then you sort of come out and you think, yeah, okay, I probably will do it again. But, you know, I mean, in the moment, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. With mushrooms, I'm sure it's very different because they're different than DMT in pretty much every other way too. So I'm sure it is different. On mushrooms, it's like, you know, we've all grown a lot from these experiences, and a lot of times these entities that I've categorized as demons most of the time, they show you things about yourself that may be difficult to face, but they may manifest themselves as very tangible beings, and a lot of times they're visually present. You can actually see them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can't, you know, a lot of times they're just feelings, and you just feel almost like you're, you know, these things just have their big nasty arms around you, and you just feel this energy, this oppressive energy. And what I've found is that, you know, when you can face those things, you with mushrooms at least, you can usually find that they are preying on some weakness that you have. You know, I had a lot of guilt about not being present for a lot of my children's lives, being wrapped up in work and my career and things like that. And I realized that there was a lot of guilt I was dealing with from that, you know, feeling like I had damaged my kids and not been a good dad. Mm. And once I was able to face that on these very intense mushroom trips, I came out of that experience saying, you know what, I'm gonna be a better dad. And I'm you know, I was able to feel that guilt and that shame in such a demonic, you know, personal. It was like it really was an entity that was there, and in some cases they were actually visual entities, and I was able to overcome those. What I think is interesting about DMT is that, from your description and most descriptions that I hear, is it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like these entities are really a part of you. It seems like these things are completely independent of you. They're independent of your mind. These things are really free-thinking, intelligent entities that you're interacting with, which kind of leads me into what I was curious about. And I think I know a little bit about your stance on this, but I really want you to explain kind of your view on extraterrestrials. It sounds like that's kind of what you're getting at here, is that you're actually interacting with other entities. They're completely different from you. They're not a manifestation of any part of your consciousness, or are they?
No, I think these are totally independent beings, and that's the thrust of my stance, and it's going to be the thrust of my, what I hope is my ongoing work, because, you know, the esoteric and occult philosophies are absolutely clear that, you know, unseen all around us, you know, there are hierarchies of intelligences and beings, you know, with different qualities of consciousness. And I'm sure that the majority of the beings that interact with us, whether we know it or not, on psilocybin, on DMT, on other psychedelics, they're somehow they're part of nature. They're part of this planet, and they're somehow related to us in terms of our mental states, our spiritual states. You know, I don't pretend I know the answers to that, but as you've just said, you know, you've had experiences where you've dealt with darker aspects of yourself in your life and come out a better person, and I would ditto that with DMT. I've certainly changed as an individual. So for me, yeah, I mean, these are beings that are independent of us. And, you know, with sufficient doses of a suitable psychedelic, secure a life-changing interaction with these beings. These are highly evolved entities, very powerful. And, you know, by no argument do I say it's a product of our mind alone. Far from it.
Now, do you feel like these things are they different calibers of character? I mean, do you have some good ones and some bad ones, some that are malicious and some that want to help? And to what extent do they interact with you? Obviously, like we've discussed already, I mean, they physically, I say physically, you say quasi-physically, I like that term, quasi-physically interact with us. And by that we mean, if your wife is sitting next to you watching you have the experience, she doesn't see a being here in the material realm interacting with you, but you having the experience are feeling like in that moment you're being physically interacted with in some way. So we call that quasi-physical. they're interacting with you like that, do they speak with you? Do they carry conversations with you? Do they show intent to you? And in what way do they express their intent? And are they all over the board, or do they seem to come from one particular race or species or whatever? Give me some background on all that, because that's such a cool thing to me.
That's a great question. I mean, look, there seems to be a common type. It feels almost wrong saying a common type, because these entities, these beings, feel like they operate from a basis of divinity. That's certainly how it feels to me. And I came to call them occult masters, because their power, their intelligence, their wisdom, their compassion, it just seemed beyond compare. You know, I mean, these beings can give you ecstatic laughter. They can impose ecstatic laughter. They can give you the kind of playtime that is just out of this world. So yeah, I mean, that to me seems to be a common type. That said, I've interacted with, you know, some extreme versions of those, and their power is just phenomenal. Sometimes, you know, you smoke DMT in the garden and something interacts with you, and you're left with the feeling that being really has no earthly business down at ground level. You know, it feels like you've attracted something that ordinarily does not trouble itself with humans, and those experiences are just incredible. That aside, I've had experiences where the being as being above me, and you can palpably feel it, you can feel its energy, and you can feel it's been not so well disposed toward, and there's times when I felt that, where I've turned away and I sort of put my hands up in front of me and said, no, I don't want you down here. You know, I just get a bad feeling about it. And then out of all those 600 experiences, there's 3 that stand out where I was dealing with something that was very, very different. And one was in the bedroom, and I could see this being, its transparent ethereal form filling the room, and this spiral form came down towards my heart. I'll be honest, I mean, this thing, it felt like it could have killed me, like we can squash a grape between our thumb and forefinger.
Oh wow.
It felt like this thing could just and I have never been so scared in my life. And then there was another occasion where it was foggy, you know, it was damp outside, and I don't know, I feel like I was being subliminally worked on, and I felt like obliged to sort of prepare a pipe, and I kind of did it. It felt like I was doing it under duress. I was like, okay, I'll smoke one. It was like, I'm only putting 15 milligrams in this pipe, and I go outside and it's all damp and foggy, and I smoke this pipe, and this thing, it's like it's just there. It's like waiting for me, and it's just within seconds it's in my brain. You know, you can feel that quasi-physical thing. It's done something very quick in my brain, and I can feel this. I can see this entity. I can feel it. It's very different to all the other ones I've dealt with. And then it's out of my brain, and then I can see it. It shoots up through the clouds, punches a little hole in the cloud. With seconds, that hole forms back up, and I am just, now I'm in pieces. I'm like, I feel like I've been psychically raped, or it's put something in my mind. And for 2-3 hours, I'm like, you know, what's it done? It's done something to me. Has it put something in there that it can trigger a future date on a whim? And I was like in turmoil with this thing. And then I'm in the bath, and I start to come round, and I start to do what I've always done. I think, do you know what? You got me real good. You played a real good mind trick on me, because for the last 3 hours, I have been thinking all kinds of worrying thoughts about my spiritual health, my psychic health. And, you know, after a few hours, you're okay, and then it just becomes another experience, you know. But I felt like I was stitched up on that occasion. But as I say, that's you know, I've had like 3 of those out of 600, so they're very few and far between. But clearly there are different orders of beings. And what's really interesting, I find, is that those beings that are like that, darker and more challenging, to me, they feel like a higher order of being than those occult masters. They feel like they're somehow much higher. And if I was to label them, I would say they are demons, but I'd probably give a very different interpretation to our mainstream religions.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. So it's almost like it just feels disrespectful to call them the lower entities, because they're certainly much higher than us. But maybe what we see in a lot of the DMT art, I see these beings that are made of light that are sort of doing different types of work on people. You feel like those guys a lot of the time are of a sort of common type, and they seem to be these. You call them occult masters, or what we might call ascended masters of some kind. And then there's an order above them that would be sort of these demonic forces. And you feel like these forces have maybe more power in some way, or more scope of influence in some way. Is that accurate?
I suspect so. I think in terms of humankind evolving, and I'm getting very esoteric and
well, that's what we're here to do, man. We're into the esoteric stuff.
In terms of mankind's evolution, I think millions of years hence, they'll come to a point where we have to sort of face those kind of beings and realize where they're coming from, and sort of realize how as a race that we need to acknowledge how they're operating and recognize that and somehow overcome it. I don't mean in terms of a battle. I just mean they seem like a gatekeeper to a much, much higher reality. But this is very deep, and in my personal opinion, this is many, many aeons hence from now. But ultimately, for angels, they were supposedly created before the angels. So I think there is something in that. Ultimately, we would have to get beyond these beings in our evolution and our changes over the aeons.
This is so mind-blowing that I'm having a hard time even coming up with talking points, because I'm so immersed in the experiences that you're laying out. It's just, if you've ever had a psychedelic experience, I would imagine for someone who hasn't had a psychedelic experience, this podcast is going to be completely unlistenable. But you know what I mean? But if you've ever had a psychedelic experience, a really profound one, this is just mesmerizing, because this is the type of stuff that you both fear and aspire to, Well,
you're right, and I'm gonna propose to humble myself a little bit, because it may sound like I've done a lot, but on Instagram, on social media, I'm in touch with people, and people come to me and they tell me stories, and I got to be honest, if I'd experienced what they've experienced, and it might be a one-off occasion or so, I would be like, so one girl came and she said, look, I smoked DMT one time with my boyfriend. He wanted me to smoke it, and we were way out of the sticks, middle of nowhere. And she tells me what happens, and I'm like, whoa, my God, if that was my first time, I would never, ever be going back. And to be fair, there's some real brave souls out there. There are braver souls than me, loading pipes much bigger than I've ever loaded, and they are coming back with some mind-blowing stories. And I don't know, maybe I'll try and catch them up one day, but yeah, just that really. Respect to those people. They know who they are. Yeah,
and what's interesting to me about DMT, and I've said this before, and again, I always relate back to my own psychedelic experiences being mostly rooted in psilocybin mushrooms. But with mushrooms, you either take a very, very small dose, like a microdose, or you take a small dose, or a moderate dose, or a heroic dose, or what I would call an extreme dose of 8 to 10 to 12 or 15 grams, anything in that range. Things just get crazy up in that range, but there's no working your way into a heroic dose. You either have it or you don't, right?
Yeah.
You take 1 gram of mushrooms, and if it's the right kind of mushrooms, then you might be able to, walk around your house and do your laundry and play with your dog and have a normal day and just kind of think about your mundane activities from a different perspective and get some retrospection or some introspection that you otherwise wouldn't have. You take 2.5, 3 grams and it's a different story. You take 5 to 6 and you have a heroic dose and you go off into the cosmos, and it's a different experience. What I think is interesting about DMT is that you can, at least in my very, very, very limited experience, you can just take a little bit and get a little bit of a DMT experience. Or you can take a little bit more and get a little bit more of a DMT experience. But they're all crazy and profound. You take 1 gram of mushrooms and you may not notice a tremendous difference from your normal state of consciousness, I guess is what I mean. But even if you just hit a very small amount of DMT, which I've done, you still are going to have an experience that's nothing like you've ever had before. So I can't even imagine.
Yeah,
when you talk about people who have done much greater doses than you, I can't imagine the depths that they've reached or the heights that they've reached, I guess. It just must be a whole different universe.
Yeah, indeed. And what you say about, DMT, I mean, I found that, even when it's sort of losing its potency and it's still active, highly active, you smoke it and you're like, oh, God, man, that stuff is like, even when it's like losing its potency, it's strong. But when it's fresh, I mean, oh my God, that stuff is just, and sometimes you smoke it and there's just this brief moment where, you think, oh, this is going to be big. I don't know. Maybe it's how the vapor goes down, or I don't know. But you just this second, like, oh no, like, this is game on. And I've done that a few times, and yeah, I mean, they're just,
Do you think
incredible?
Whenever you take a larger dose, is that when you? Because like I've one of my experiences I had, which was a beautiful experience. I actually took a, LSD has never had nearly the profound impact on me that like psilocybin has in the right doses. I've not done LSD more than a handful of times, but I've shared some with friends from the same batch who've done it a lot, and I know that what I have taken has been good LSD. But I had, a couple of years of experience of very, very high dose psilocybin trips under my belt by the time I did LSD. So I found it to be a much milder sort of experience than, say, 10 or 12 grams of mushrooms, or even 4, 5, 6 grams of mushrooms. But I did have a DMT experience just a few weeks ago when I took one hit of LSD and 2.5 grams of mushrooms and about maybe 50 or 40 milligrams of DMT, and the excuse me, the mushrooms sort of eased my entry into the DMT world, because I was frankly still sort of, I guess, scared after my first trip, which was pretty disorienting and worrisome, but I went to a place where I've seen a lot of art done about this place, where it was this beautiful, expansive, massive, colorful, geometric place. Almost, I've been to the Grand Canyon, and you may not have been, being in the UK, but the Grand Canyon is just a massive. It's so big you can't imagine how big it is. It's too big to imagine. And on this DMT trip, I went to a place that was of that order of magnitude. It was massive, but it was colorful, and gears were moving together, and shapes were moving together. But the colors that I was seeing were infused with emotion, and as the colors would change and the gears would move, I was going through ranges of emotion. But it ultimately was one of the most beautiful and loving experiences that I've ever had. And I got to stay there for about 10 or 15 minutes, which was just absolutely profound. But I passed through that place on my first couple of trips. I did go to that place, but I just blasted right through it and went to other places that were a lot clearer and a lot more defined and a lot more, like you would say, quasi-physical. Kind of like my girlfriend, on her first trip, went to a place that looked like the Avatar movie or something, beautiful mountains, and it was an entire different world. Have you seen this kind of variety in your experiences between these sort of mushroom trip-like beautiful mind spaces versus feeling like you were literally on a different physical planet?
I think I'm going to answer that like that. I like this. I strongly suspect that these visual vistas that you see on DMT and the mushrooms, I think this is within the gift of the entity it's effectively engulfing you within its mind, and in doing so, it's able to impose its own imaginative fancies upon your perception. It's able to effects. So, for example, I once had it was my first ever dose of magic mushrooms, and it was a high dose. And I was in my bedroom, and all of a sudden, one wall just sort of stretched out to the horizon like it was miles away, but it was perfect.
Yep.
And it seemed as like real, you know. And my opinion is that this is it's within the gift of these beings to make it seem so by operating their body of mind, that crystal clear body of mind, in a strange lensing way that tricks your mind. It really does look like that the wall in the bedroom is now, 2-3 miles over towards the horizon. And I think it's the same with these highly defined scenes that we see. It's within the gift of these beings to impose that upon our perception, and they can make these areas look vast. They can change them very, very rapidly. And I think one reason why they look so highly defined, and this for me is really interesting, it's because these beings, their body of mind, and indeed our consciousness, it's a much higher density. It's an uncommon density. It's something that we're not really familiar with. So we've all seen these great HD TVs that look so sharp and so crisp and so clear. But these DMT experiences, they're like way above these HD TVs.
Absolutely.
And I argue that it's because their body of mind is so dense. I mean, it's so dense that it can pass right through your body. It's so dense that it can impose upon you and give you a sense of your skeletal self. And for any, I don't know, philosophers, scientists, be like, this is what big news. And yeah, it seems to be going that way, but slowly.
Now, so what I love the vernacular that you've had to create to describe these experiences, the body of mind that you're experiencing with these different entities. So a couple of questions. Number one, do you feel like with the DMT experience that you're always operating within the body of mind of a different entity? Actually, let's go with that one first. Are you always operating within the body of mind of a different entity, or are you having an experience of your own within your own consciousness in a different time or place? I mean, I know it's very difficult to explain these things, and you certainly don't have all the answers. But I mean, we're here to speculate wildly because it's it's hard to do otherwise.
So what fascinated me was, that between smoking the pipe, 3 tokes, laying back, and then within seconds something profound happens, and then it looks like you're somewhere else, and that it totally fascinated me. And it was those initial few seconds that I really focused on. So I'd smoke DMT and I would be telling myself, stay sharp, stay observant, stay sharp, stay observant. And I came to realize that the DMT is very rapidly amplifying my mind stuff, my consciousness. And then you start to feel that something else has arrived. Palpably, you start to feel it, and then it imposes its energy. And experiment after experiment, time and time again, you start to become more and more familiar with what's happening. And it's like, I suppose it's like exercising a muscle. The sort of the sense of your consciousness being able to sense of something increases over time with these experiments. And you start to realize, okay, now I can feel it. And then it imposes its energy. Actively, you are within its body of mind. It seems to be able to, and I choose this word carefully, mesmerize you. It seems to impose a mesmeric state upon you. And if you go into esoteric and occult literature, there's a lot to be said about mesmerism and what it actually is, as opposed to hypnotism. And it's like, a fascination. It's something imposing its will upon you. You know, it's imposing a will that's more powerful than yours, and it's doing that, and you are in a state of fascination. And I've smoked DMT, and I'm, the room is crystal clear, but it's clear that something's in there, like open-eyed, rapid eye movement. And I'm a little bit worried. I can sense something's there. You're looking all over for the thing that's actually invisibly but palpably filling the room. So I don't know. I hope that goes some way to answering it.
Yeah,
effectively, yeah.
It does, in as much as anyone in the world could, Dick. These are, we're not talking about hard maths here, right? I mean, this is these are conversations of a whole different order, and to the point that the vocabulary hardly even exists to have these conversations, or it doesn't really exist. And you've gone a long way in trying to develop one that does. Terence McKenna did a beautiful job of.
He was something special, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, no, he was absolutely, and it was funny. And I've rewatched my DMT video from my first trip. I've watched most of it. I haven't even watched the whole thing. I spent 15 minutes in the trip and 30 minutes talking about it afterward. But Terence McKenna made a lot more sense to me after that DMT trip. Just the way of describing the connection between the material world and the spiritual or the metaphysical. I see it all as this big cosmic soup that we're swimming around in, and within this soup, it's almost like if you think of a very small pond that's clear, and you throw a pebble into it, you can see the mud at the bottom of the pond get stirred up, and it creates a cloud. And then there are different densities of mud clouds within the water, and there are different particulates in the water. And I think that's all we're doing. We tend to think of the material world as the thing that we're in, and if we can't touch it in some way, it's not there. But our senses only allow us to see 5% of the universe as we know it, and there could be a lot more than that, but we know for certain we can't see or measure or observe with all of our instrumentation. We have no ability to observe or measure more than 5% of the universe, and it may be 5% of 1% of what there is to see. We don't know, and that's why these conversations are so interesting to me, because who the hell knows? With these entities, I've always believed, and I know a lot of the ancients believe, most shamanic cultures believe, that the planets themselves are conscious. And certainly on like an ayahuasca trip, a lot of people talk about interacting with Mother Ayahuasca, who some people might even call Gaia, or the mother spirit of the earth, which virtually everyone, or most people, many people who work with ayahuasca have this interaction with Mother Ayahuasca. Do you, on any of these DMT trips, have you ever encountered a Mother Earth consciousness, or one that you feel like is on a planetary scale, or anything of that nature?
I've certainly interacted with what I would call feminine spirits and powerful feminine spirits, and I do believe that the earth, in a very esoteric and occult way, and probably a way that we can't fully comprehend, is conscious in its own right. Personally, I'm not sure anybody's actually interacted on a one-to-one basis with the spirit of the earth. That's just my opinion, but I'm sure that these beings that do interact with us are certainly powerful enough, and on many occasions more than powerful enough, to leave the ayahuasca user, the DMT user, really convinced that they have interacted with God or the spirit of the earth. But really, I suspect that there are countless we can't see, we can't perceive without unaided perception. But no, I personally, I think that's too much to ask. That I took ayahuasca and I interacted with the soul spirit of the earth. We may be interacting with emissaries of that spirit, but not that spirit direct. In the same way that I'm sure that Look, I smoke DMT, and I'm sure that I've gone and disturbed God at the moment. The power that's being imposed upon you, it's like sometimes almost wrathful, and you think, oh shit, I've gone and disturbed God now. But really, no, I think these beings are just so and leave you coming away from those experiences convinced that you have interacted with the creator or the spirit of the earth. But I don't personally think so.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm probably misquoting or taking out of context a lot of the experiences that I've listened to people talk about or discuss with people, but that makes a lot of sense to me. That the earth spirit would be an awfully big, awfully powerful spirit that I would think would be, when you're talking about different levels of beings that you've encountered, even the masters, as you call them, and then the beings above them that you categorize as demons, maybe, or whatever. See, if there are multiple levels of beings, then it seems like the planetary conscious would probably be far enough removed from us that it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to ever interact with. That makes perfect sense to me. I need to backtrack a little bit into something I wanted to bring up earlier, which kind of prompted this whole conversation. Is you and I met on Instagram, I don't know, maybe close to a year ago when I first started. I had just kind of gotten on and found you, and we started talking, and you were so gracious as to give me a lot of guidance and a lot of help, and just be someone who I enjoyed speaking with on occasion. And we've followed each other and commented, and we spend time talking back and forth and referring people back and forth. And out of nowhere, after I got all of my podcast set up to conduct these interviews and talk to different people and record these things to share with the world, last week, right as I was getting this stuff set up, I was just perusing to look for some answers to a DMT experience, to a particular feature of one of my experiences, which in fact I want to get to with you in just a moment. I think it's right down the middle. But I was trying to find some answers, and I looked up DMT research, and an article in Vice magazine popped up. And lo and behold, it's with Dick Kahn, the DMT researcher. And it kind of blew my mind because, here's a guy that I've been talking to for close to a year and really enjoyed. And, you never mentioned that to me. You never would have any reason to. But within that, you were talking about your experiences in this article. And I found that totally fascinating because you were, until then, I never thought about the different set and setting, or especially the setting that a person would have these experiences in, and you've mentioned it a couple of times here, like doing it in the garden, doing it outside. And in that article, I read that the one profoundly negative experience that you had was inside, and you wondered if you would ever do it inside ever again. And all three times that I've done it, I was inside, and most of the times, not all the time, but 75% of the time when I take mushrooms, it's usually inside. The rest of the time, I'm outside hiking. But on big doses, certainly, you're in a not very conscious state for several hours, so it's not really conducive to doing that outside in most cases. But I guess my question is, what is the impact of like the set and the setting for you, your mindset coming into it, and then the place in which you take the DMT? What is the impact that's had from your experience?
So the first 18 months of my research was all indoors, save for a couple of experiments outside, all indoors. And what seems to happen indoors is that the DMT unlocks that mental and conscious energy within you, and it fills the room, and the room becomes like, visually it's shaking, it's juddering, it's jarring, it's incredibly turbulent with mind energy. It looks like you're sort of underwater, but the water is jarring and turbulent, and you don't really get that outside. There are no walls. It seems much. It's just easier. Your mind just amplifies and I sort of want to say fills the sky, but I'm sort of conscious that to anybody who's not sort of tried it, that sounds crazy. But yeah, I mean, look, I see my mind stuff way out there, you know, and like you look at that and you're like, my God, that is incredible. So what happened after 18 months? And I'm going to be honest, where I prepared a pipe and I thought, right, okay, I'm going to smoke this pipe. And my instincts was like saying, don't smoke this pipe, don't smoke this pipe, don't smoke this pipe. And I was like, yeah, I've done this enough times now. I'm going to be good. You know, it's not a massive pipe. Should be all right. It should be enough. And my instincts were like pleading with me, don't do it. And I went and what did I do? And ignored my instincts, which I don't want to say you should never do because I want to. But this one time I smoked and I don't know. My mind went into this awful negative vibe. And I'm not going to detail the thoughts that ran through my mind, but I'm going to be absolutely honest and say that to this day, that experience, that had a degree. And for the first week, second week, third week after that experience, I was struggling with the thoughts that were in my head. And, you know, it's like they always say, you know, talk about what's on your mind. So I had to have a very difficult conversation with my wife, and just having that conversation made things 80-90% better. And over time, that thing has got easier. But yeah, I mean, look, this substance, these states, they are incredibly powerful and profound, and they can scar or mark or certainly leave a imprint on your mind that you sometimes may have to deal with longer than you thought you would. And that outside, and I'm scared to smoke this inside now. Let me go outside.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. When I did it the first couple of times, I was in my bedroom, which is where I've had most of my mushroom experiences, and so it's kind of my safety nest. But again, you know, I literally got off of a conference call for work at the end of a day, and we had this DMT, and we'd just been looking forward to taking it all week long. And I got off of a very, you know, very materially driven work related phone call, and literally set the phone down and went and picked up the pipe and laid down in bed and hit it. And I was nervous about it. My mindset wasn't right. My girlfriend had been meditating all day and, you know, getting her chakras aligned, and she was in a very different mind state than I was. And she had a phenomenal experience that first time. And I was totally disoriented. As soon as I hit the pipe and laid back and it blasted off, and like you say, that ringing in my head got extremely intense. The pressure in the front of my forehead, near my in front of my pineal gland, that pressure built up. The ringing just shook and shook and shook until I felt like the entire world was vibrating, and it ripped my soul out of my body. And as soon as it happened, I lost all track of everything. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what DMT was. I didn't remember smoking DMT. And, suddenly I have, you talk about these high resolution images that are much higher resolution than any 4K TV. I'm seeing, it was almost like a fun house full of all kinds of very high resolution things going on, and nothing was scary. I mean, nothing I was seeing was scary in itself. It was just the disorientation of not knowing who I was or what had happened. I thought I had died, but I didn't know who I was, and I'm just blasting through this world of ultra high resolution crazy shit everywhere I look. And but it was very much like a different world. When you talk about being in the within sort of the mind of another being, that would almost make sense as if I was inside the high density imagination of some alien being, because it was a very alien world, very alien place. But one of the interesting things was I did see, and one of the few things that I could bring back specifically from that experience was I remember seeing an extremely shiny, glossy, black and white checkered floor. And I didn't mention this to my girlfriend at all because I was too disoriented. And then she had her experience, and she never mentioned anything until a day or two later. We were telling our story to some friends, and she brought up this black and white checkered floor. Now, anyone who is much familiar with esotericism or occult societies or whatever, you know that like in the Freemasons temples, they have black and white checkered floors. I've even heard stories that there was a black and white checkered floor in some place around the Great Pyramid at one point, which I don't know if it's true, but the point is I heard it mentioned. And she and I both had an experience in the same day without talking to each other at essentially the same time of seeing this black and white checkered floor on a DMT trip, which is what I was trying to research whenever I found your Vice article. What the hell is that about? Do you know anything about that?
About the floor, or about both seeing the same thing?
Well, both, but the black and white floor in particular.
I am not going to pretend I've got any knowledge. To be honest, those things that I'd have to dive into my library of books. I'm sure I could find something then, but off the top of my head, no. But I'm not going to lie, I'm vaguely familiar that it's something to do with Masonic lodges, but I'm not going to pretend I know what it is. But that's fascinating that you both experienced that.
Yeah, no, it was really fascinating, and it's maybe more superficial to add in that when I went into that place, it seemed extremely familiar, and so I put it out. I don't know if you saw it on my Instagram story, but I posted a picture of this esoteric. It was just some esoteric image that I found where it had all the different deities and stuff like that. Very esoterically oriented picture that probably drawn or painted by some 33rd degree Freemason or somebody. But there was the black and white floor, and a bunch of other esoteric knowledge was encoded in this picture. And I posted it on my Instagram story, and I asked a question like, hey, does anyone have any idea what this floor means, or why my girlfriend and I would have both seen this on a DMT trip? And I got a ton of feedback from people. And apparently there, according to someone that responded to me, that there's some Tibetan ancient, mystic wisdom or something like that talks about a place like this that is supposedly the place you go to prior to reincarnation. And I thought that was interesting. And
it's fascinating.
Yeah, very, very fascinating because, you being on, having the experience you do with DMT, can only imagine the bells that might be ringing in your mind when you hear something like that.
Yeah, indeed.
Have you found any answers about, and when I say answers, I mean only in the subjective sense, only answers that matter to you, right? We're not talking about empirical evidence. We're not trying to write a thesis on this, but have you personally found any answers regarding life after death? Any solace, any direction on either what that might look like, or if there is life after death, anything like that from these experiences?
So I think I've had about 3 what I think are called classic little death experiences, where you smoke DMT and you are absolutely convinced you are dead, you have died, you're on the other side of life, and that is extremely profound. And it seems it's within the gift of these beings that interact with you in such a way that you are 100% convinced that you have died, and it's very emotional, very disconcerting, very well come out of that experience and realize that you are alive. You not only realize you're alive, but you've got a sort of a newfound fondness for being alive. You're like rejuvenated. It's almost like being born again. But in terms of life after death, I suspect it's something to do with these beings. These beings, I think, are related somehow to our post-death state, and I'm not sure what that is, of course, but I do think that they're somehow related to that post-death state, or the initial stages of the post-death state. I believe.
Gotcha. What?
I mean,
What? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, from I was saying as a young child, I had that sound in my head, and there were moments whenever I was left alone as a little child, I was something invisible in the room watching me. I could sense its presence, and I could actually point to whereabouts in the room it was. And from that young age, I was convinced that there were things that we couldn't see. And for me, I think DMT is like, if anything, it sort of confirmed that suspicion for me. It's confirmed that it's almost like saying to myself, see, I knew, or see, I told you so. But saying it to myself, there are these beings out there.
So are you convinced that when this material body dies away, there's a piece of us that continues on?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'd fight sleep, and, I think 3 or 4 times it was, I have a classic out-of-body experience. And, you're able to family home, in the midst of the air. And it's really unusual because, you transiting right through a closed wooden door, but you're seeing the house exactly as you would see it with your eyes. But I guess you're seeing it with your mind's eye. So from that young age, that showed me that there's something within me that can exist outside of my physical body. So for sure, I believe that there's something immaterial and something that is essential to us and who we are that survives the bodily death. For sure, that's my firm opinion.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I've always kind of just had this hunch, and I think a lot of people do. And empirical scientists might say that we have that hunch because we need that sense of the infinite that we continue on after death. We need that for our peace of mind to operate, or at least some people do. And I've never really bought that explanation as the cause of why so many of us feel that we persist after death. But with my work with psilocybin, it became clear to me that there was just no question in my mind whatsoever that this material body is really a pretty unimportant thing. It's not that big of a deal. And they've done the studies on terminal cancer patients who work with psilocybin, and it completely rids them of their fear of death and stuff like that. Because you do. I mean, if it means anything to be me, if it means anything to be you, then our sense of this reality, our understanding of this reality, our perception of this reality is that thing. If I burn my hand, it's me that feels that burn. It's me that sees the trees. It's me that feels the wind. And when you have a deeply transformative psychedelic experience, it's that same you that's having the experience of seeing the trees. Yeah, it's the same thing, and you go into one of these experiences, and you come out and you go, the shit that I saw, the experiences that I had, the sensations that I experienced, they were as real, if not more real, than anything I've ever encountered, and my physical body had nothing to do with it. And I came out of my first heroic dose of mushrooms a completely changed human being forever, because I knew at that point that the body. The body is a part of what we're doing here. It's part of our experience, but it certainly has nothing to do with the end of us whenever the body comes to an end itself.
Yeah, and I think, opinions and arguments like that you're making, that I'm making, and that countless individuals around the world want to make, it points to the power of these substances. Medicines, and I like that these substances are called medicines, but the inference is that are you sick? Is that why you might take this medicine? But no, it's not that people are physically sick, but I think these they're like a spiritual medicine. They open up an aspect of you that you were hitherto unaware of, or that was locked away, or you just not accessed. So in that sense, I think it's absolutely apt to call these substance as medicinal.
Well, yeah,
spiritually.
It is because, it's like you just said, people might say, well, why are you taking medicine? Are you sick? Well, absolutely I'm sick. I'm trapped in a superficial material reality that's effectively functioning as an insane asylum, So
yes, I like that.
So
yes.
they are spiritual medicine, and they do give you perspective, and they do provide you with a broader set of tools to function with in this reality, of a deeper sense of meaning and purpose, and it's not superficial. I don't think. I think it's very real. I've been able to affect a much greater and much more positive impact on my life and everyone in it in a much greater way since working with these things. And people are walking around with a lack of purpose. One of the big arguments taking place in philosophy today is, how do we have a non-religious world, or how do we create a non-religious world? How are we ever to develop a world without religion in which we don't all lose our purpose, our sense of purpose? And Jordan Peterson has done some great work on this. But psychedelics are without a question. This is how you do it. This is you have a psychedelic experience, and you see that you don't need the religious framework and the dogmas and everything else to find love and awe and wonder in this world, and then to also live without the fear or the anxiety that one day your body's going to rot and the you that is you is going to be gone. So no, I think they're definitely spiritual medicines. They make they make a huge difference in how I approach life, for sure. And that's something that you can take from these experiences. Would you say that sense of reinforcement is the biggest thing that you've taken from these experiences? Obviously, you've had a lot of experiences where you've encountered, again, these other beings and all that. What is it that you would say has been the biggest takeaway, the biggest benefit in your life, and in what ways?
So I think put all the whatever happened in those experiences aside, and just what's the overall out of the experiences. And I would have to say it's like an awakening. I mean, people use this phrase, and that phrase, and somebody's lit or somebody's woke. And I personally, I would never label myself as somebody who's lit or woke, but for sure, I would say that the overall outcome of these experiences, it feels like an awakening. There's a part of me now that is awake that was not so awake before my psychedelic experiences with DMT.
Absolutely.
So, I think it's like that. It's like an awakening. It does change you as an individual. I mean, look, it's not gonna take away things like intrusive thoughts. It's not going to take away, the darker aspects of our psyche, because that's who we are. But what it will do, it will give you the tools to be more mindful of the influences that may play upon your mind, and to be able to deal with them I'm certainly acutely aware of the influences on my mind. And, once upon a time, you might have an intrusive thought, and it may start galloping away. And, all of a sudden, a situation's become so bad in your mind, I'm going to do that. But no, once those sort of things arise, you think, okay, that's interesting, but I'm not going to let that run away with me, and I'm not going to allow that. So I think it's more mindful of how your psyche operates,
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I just made a post the other day, and maybe you saw it. I'm trying to scan through my Instagram and find it, because I know that you'll appreciate it, and it's relevant to what you're saying right there. Let me see if I can dig it up. Oh, here we go. Well, first of all, Sam Harris, UCLA neuroscientist and philosopher, he said the power of psychedelics is that they often reveal in the span of a few hours depths of awe and understanding that can otherwise elude us for a lifetime.
True.
And that's remarkable. Terence McKenna has talked about being raised in a very strict Catholic household with a lot of oppression, a lot of repression, a lot of problems. He took LSD at 17, 18, 19 years old, and he said it was like 10 years of psychotherapy in 2 hours. It all dovetails with what you're saying. When I made that Sam Harris post a couple weeks back, my caption that I put on that said that Psychedelics are a unique and powerful tool for gaining perspectives from which we're otherwise restricted by our personal experiences, emotional trauma, and cultural conditioning. These tools offer us expansive views from a range of mountaintops from which we may more clearly observe the big picture and how everything in our lives and the world are connected. With these new perspectives come a greater understanding and appreciation of things. From this new viewpoint, we find a deeper sense of purpose and love of life, ourselves, and each other. This love and understanding is what empowers, even compels us to forgive ourselves and others. This inner spiral of love, understanding, and forgiveness of ourselves ripples out to every relationship and experience in our lives and completely changes our worldview, which is the subjective reality in which we live our lives. Embarking on the journey of psychedelic exploration with reverence and pure intent has changed the lives of multitudes of people for thousands of years. To stigmatize and criminalize these wondrous medicinal gifts is to restrict a person's individual pursuit of wholeness and happiness, leaving them to face the often crippling challenges of life using the fragmentary and inadequate psychological toolkit provided them by a broken system. The point is that these things, you're exactly right, these things do give us a whole different range of perspectives to approach our problems in life and to catch the thoughts that come into our head and keep those things from taking the wheel, so to speak.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, can't really add much to that, Adam. These are life-changing medicines, life-changing interactions.
Now, you've done this. You've been doing this for a while, and you've done it at a pretty substantial level. Do you have any plans to continue? Are you going to keep working with DMT and talking about it and telling the world? Or are you going to go work with something else? Or are you done? Have you done enough?
So I published one book, and 100% happy with that book, and I produced a second project ready for publication, and at the time that was finished, I was 100% happy with that. But then since I've got on social media and started to interact with people like yourself, people from all around the world, and you realise what other people are doing, and I think, you know what, that book now, it may have been good at the time, but it's not good enough now. So what I'm proposing to do is take the very best experiences from my second year and my third year, and that will be my second book. And what I would really like to do beyond that is try and go at it again, but try and go deeper and further, try and introduce Hamala to extend the experiences, try to partake in a ayahuasca experience, at least one, if not more, and just give this one last shot. I'd like to produce 3 books under this title, and I'd like the third book to be, I'd like to feel that the second book is better than the first book, and the third book is better than the second book, and I'll only publish if I'm 100% happy with them. So yeah, I would like to revisit the research. It's just whether I've got the capacity to do that, because it's very much a mind game, very much a mind game. And I think with those 3 years I got on a roll, it's like I was doing it frequently, and I think that frequency made it easier. But now that I've stopped, I find it's much harder to revisit. But I do still smoke DMT. I smoked some 2 or 3 nights ago, and it's the same old story. The experience was, that was amazing. But if you asked me to go at it again tonight, I'd be like, oh my God, what, are you crazy?
Yeah, I can only imagine. We've got some friends that do it, that have done it maybe 50 or 60 times or something like that. I mean, I can't imagine 600, but even just doing it once, twice, 3 times. Everyone I talk to, they all say the same thing, including you. It's like it's not something that you ever really get used to, is it?
No. I think in one of my reports, I said, look, I can get used to amplifying my mind and seeing the effects of that, but the power that some of these beings can impose, I don't think I could ever get used to that. That is just phenomenal. And earlier you mentioned something about, I don't know in what context, but the sort of phrase scientific instruments came up, and I've smoked in my room, and I thought, there has to be a way that these energies can be measured. I mean, they're phenomenal. I don't know.
I think you're giving the scientific community and our current technological understanding a little bit too much credit. That's the problem. You know, I know what you mean, though. The energies are so tangible and so palpable and so present that it seems impossible that we couldn't measure them. I think that's just a testament to how little we know, and all of our arrogance scientifically, how little, how low our level of advancement really is. That's really all that's chalked up to, not a lack of energy. Now, whatever you do, whatever we can do to support you on the podcast and with our community, we've got a lot of things going on, and we'll always do that. I love you to death as a person.
And likewise, thank you. I love you too, man.
Yeah, man, and the work you do, I think, is so important, and frankly, it's ballsy. I mean, not everybody in the world is willing to do what you do. So any way that we can help with that, any way we can support you, we always will. So before we go, any advice to
I mean, just to be able to talk about these experiences, you know, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm still integrating, I'm still processing what the hell went on in those 3 years, and you know, it's great to write and put things down in print, but very much I feel like I'm still integrating, still processing, still coming to terms with, I mean, these experiences. Anybody who smoked DMT, yourself included, you know, I mean, this is just, it's life-changing, it's game-changing, it's world-changing stuff.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, man, I just can't say thank you enough, Dick. It's been just mesmerizing. It's been awesome getting to chat with you. Hopefully, we're going to do it many more times. I look forward to a book, hopefully, in the future. And just thank you so much for what you do, man. Thanks for coming on.
Adam, thank you. Much love, brother. Really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, brother. Well, take good care of yourself, and we'll be talking to you soon, everybody. Dick Kahn, DMT researcher, DMT and My Occult Mind. The book is out. It's an investigation of occult realities using the spirit molecule. Go check it out on Amazon. May the light be upon you. May peace be within you. And may you be a sun on the paths of all men. God bless you guys. Have a great week. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share at will. Also, check us out on Instagram at shamanic.philosophy, at shamanicphilosophy.com. And keep in mind, we do have the online store coming up soon at wokeshop.com. God bless you guys. Have a great week.
We're so distracted now, we